Jonathan.
So far, so good. Yeah.
That's good.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Monday on the day after a nice three-peat for the women's basketball team. Welcome to another Wake Up with YPN. I'm Jonathan Fell, Vice Chair of your Iowa City YPN here with the Iowa City Area Association of Realtors. Today, we are learning about the water service and sewer and septic lines, and within that, what we should know about the lead service lines specifically here in Iowa City. And here with us today is Jonathan Durst to break this down for us a little bit more. I want to encourage you all to ask questions as you watch today. And for this episode in particular, we are doing a drawing for Iowa Heartlanders Flex Tickets. So you get a set of 2 tickets to the Heartlanders, and these can be used anytime during the season. And to be entered for those, all you need to do is submit a question during the live stream today. So don't forget to do that. Jonathan, welcome, and thank you for being with us today. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your job history, and how you landed where you are with your career?
Yeah, that's a good story. So I'm the Iowa City Water Superintendent, so I manage the city's water supply and the distribution of the drinking water. Not to be confused with wastewater, which manages the collection of sewage and the treatment of sewage before discharge back to the Iowa River. My history, starts with service in the military, followed by the GI Bill and some degrees in engineering, and then starting a career in public infrastructure, specifically underground infrastructure. I've worked for Cedar Rapids, and I've also worked for Iowa City.
Awesome. So part of what was the impetus for this discussion today was the recent letter that went out to Iowa City homeowners from the city of Iowa City. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that letter and its contents, and we can use that as a jumping off point for us this morning.
Yeah, great. So that letter was sent by the Service Line Warranties of America as part of a marketing agreement partnership between the city and the Service Line Warranties of America. That marketing agreement allowed for the use of the city's logo on that information to provide it some legitimacy to get past the spam filter we've all developed over the years for receiving mail that goes directly into our garbage. The hope with that letter was to foremost educate homeowners or property owners of their liabilities associated with water and sewer lines, that they own those lines all the way to the main, which includes the portions within the public right-of-way. And older homes likely have older lines that are degrading over time and can be quite the financial liability. So that insurance offers an opportunity to offset that financial liability for a small premium. That insurance is part of a larger lead reduction program that we initiated here at the end of 2023 as a beginning response to the updated lead and copper rule at the federal level, which stems from the Flint, Michigan crisis. So our lead and copper rule or lead reduction program had 3 components. The first was banning the repair of lead service lines when they become broken, because that can cause a additional financial burden on customers. We wanted to give an opportunity, or at least inform folks of that financial liability that they could incur if it becomes broken, and also give them an option for insurance to help mitigate that. And then the last portion of that program is a cost share. So people can be proactive or reactive. Basically, it allows for a assessment of lead exposure risk, and then provides some resources to allow folks to make a decision that isn't as financially burdensome as it could have been.
Okay, excellent. So maybe let's take just a minute to step back and inform our listeners or viewers what constitutes a lead service line.
Yeah, so, with anything, it's well defined in legalese what a lead service line is, but for practical purposes, um, a lead service line is essentially a lead pipe. So that lead pipe is traditionally used to connect residential or single family homes to the public main. The reason lead was used is because it's somewhat abundant. It's also very flexible. And a lot of times service lines have to snake around under the ground to get away from things and under and over things. So it made a lot of sense for folks to use that back in the day, which is typically prior to 1950, to make the connection to the water main with that, because they could move it around. It was malleable. It was somewhat indestructible, and it would last a long time. So that's one type of lead service line, the very literal definition of it being a lead pipe. But lead can also leach off of that pipe in complex with other metals. So a galvanized iron line is also considered a lead line because it has been lead contaminated. So if a galvanized iron line has ever been downstream of a lead line at any time in its life, it's also considered to be a lead service line.
Interesting.
The other thing to know about lead is it isn't just limited to the service lines. There's a lot of lead sources in people's homes. So once you get past the service line through the water meter, you're now into the home's plumbing. And as I'm sure most realtors are aware, every home has its own story when it comes to its plumbing and electrical. And so copper pipes in homes have traditionally been sweated together with solder. And that solder has contained high amounts of lead in the past, all the way up to 1988 when it was reduced. So those joints between the copper can also leach lead into the water. And then there's also old fixtures. Brass alloys tend to contain a lot of lead, up to 8% in some cases. And so those can also leach lead into the water. This federal law is pretty well focused on the service lines themselves, not the home's plumbing, but our cost share does offer what we call the faucets, filters, and fountains cost share to allow for a point of use filtration system or the replacement of a fixture.
Excellent. So you started touching on it a little bit there. Talk to us maybe a little bit more about that leaching, and the effects that can have. If it isn't obvious, maybe on the concerns, the health effects when lead leaches into our drinking water.
Yeah. So I wouldn't mind sharing my screen at this point to
Sure.
Allow for some discussion here. So a lot of the resources available to the folks in Iowa City are available on the icgov.org/water webpage. Which would lead you here. And so on this page, there's this first section here that has quite a bit of information available for property owners or anybody interested. And so the first stop is the city's lead service inventory. When you come into this lead inventory, you're provided with a pop-up that allows you to understand that there's some sampling available, because having a lead service line doesn't necessarily mean that you have lead in your water, because we control the chemistry to make sure that that water isn't corrosive and causing lead to come out. But you can come in here and search for a particular address. Here we're on Davenport. We know that 420 Davenport is a lead service line, so it's a tier 1, which means it's a single family structure serviced by a lead service line. These yellow colors, these are homes that we don't know if it has lead or not, but we're assuming so because of their year built being 1904. Anything before 1950 is something that we suspect as having a lead service line. These blue parcels are ones where we don't expect there to be a lead service line built after 1950, but it's likely that they have leaded solder joints on their copper piping within the home, and we can consider that between 1950 and 1988. There's a bunch of other types. The pink here is a galvanized iron line that's probably been exposed by lead. Green is what we consider tier 5 or not lead. And then there's essentially multifamily residential homes that are going to be orange. But a lot of times downtown, even though it may be a cut up building for, apartments, it's still a single family residence overall. So it could be one or the other, but we categorize it as a single family residence because that's still what it's categorized in some of the records. So that's kind of your first resource. When it comes to lead itself, we tend to focus on our frequently asked questions, what things mean, what can I do? But I tend not to get too into the weeds on the public health aspect of that, since I'm, the water superintendent, not a public health or doctor professional. But what we know from the EPA is that lead is a neurological issue. It can cause folks to, essentially lose IQ or become aggressive, things like that over time. If you have acute lead poisoning, it can create some additional effects such as nausea, et cetera. So it's important to know the public health aspect of it, in that here in the state of Iowa, the Iowa Department of Public Health does children blood levels test screening to make sure that they're, basically being a second check for us, that we're doing our jobs correctly. I don't know if anybody saw recently some news, but there was a big applesauce contamination that caused quite a bit of lead poisoning in at least 400 infants and children throughout the United States. So it just goes back to the idea that, lead is present in our life in a lot of different ways, and lead service line is just one aspect of that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So this website that you're showing us, this is the Iowa City. Say the URL for us one more time, please.
Yep. It's icgov.org/water. We'll bring you right to this page.
And that's a place where folks can check for themselves about a residence or a property that they would like to look into a bit more, see if they have that service line or the potential for that service line. And then if the results then, or if they are unknown in that sort of respect, is there a way that folks can maybe move forward just to do a quick check, or who should they be in contact with? Because it sounds like, from what our conversation has been this far to this point, having a lead service line does not necessarily mean or equate to the potential for lead poisoning, because there's some other factors that go into that. So, what are some ways that folks can confirm if there are those unknowns, or if they do have a lead service line, they can confirm the status of the water in their home?
Yeah. So what that comes down to, what I had up there was our cost share programs. So I'll back up. And if you could bring that screen share back up, that would be helpful, because I need to talk about what this actually looks like. So this is kind of a cutaway. If you could look underground and see a profile of what this water service line might look like under the ground, out in the street or next to the street. So here's your street and your curb line. There's a public main. So this red stuff is all city-owned responsibility. So you have the public main, and then you have that connection to the public main, which is your service line that runs into the home through the meter. I like to tell people, think about it like a driveway. Your driveway connects your home to the public road service out in the road. And if something happens to your driveway, that is your responsibility, then you end up having to fix your driveway. Same thing with your service line. The difficulty is your driveway is something you can see, whereas your service line is all buried under the ground, and you may not even know where this stop box is, the things that people hit with their lawnmowers. So even though we can come into a home, or we can provide guidance to homeowners on how to identify what the material might be coming into their home, going to their water meter, that doesn't mean that the material isn't different throughout. We call them kind of Frankenstein lines, because let's say the home was built in 1900 and has a service line from the 1900s. Maybe at some point the stop box broke, and somebody came in and spliced in a new stop box and just clamped the pipes back together. So in this direction, it's all lead, then it's copper through the new stop box, and then it's galvanized iron into the home, and you see galvanized iron here. Or you see PEX here, and the home recently had a remodel, And so everything looks good from the curb stop to here, but there's, a 2-foot section of lead right next to the main because that was under the road and they didn't want to break the pavement out and incur that additional cost. So because of that, in our cost share program, we have the lead service line replacement cost share, but we also have a verification of service line materials cost share. So if somebody has a lead service unknown line, which would be one of these yellow parcels, and they want to get a better idea of what that is, they can have themselves a verification dig, which is going to give you 50% not to exceed $3,000, whichever is less, to have somebody come and essentially what we call vacuum excavate around the stop box and 2 feet on either side for us to come and then verify what those materials are under the ground. And even that's not a foolproof plan, but cities like Pittsburgh have done a similar program and have found that going 2 feet on either side gives them the best opportunity to identify any materials that could be lead or lead contaminated.
Excellent. Yeah. So expanding into the share program and some of this, we did get a question from a Facebook user a little bit ago that I was holding on to because I wanted to kind of tie it in with this last little part of our time today. The question is, how is the insurance that is being offered or this cost share program different from an add-on that may be offered by part of my current homeowner policy or my current home insurance policy? How is that different? How does that interact? What might be, if you want to say a little bit more about that cost share program that you haven't said already, what might be the difference there?
Yeah, so the insurance portion of the lead reduction program, we've heard quite a number of different things from folks who, are calling into one, verify it's not a scam, because it's hard to do that. You can't even say, this is not a scam, please read, because of course a scam would say that. But when it comes to the insurance, what we tell folks is shop around like anywhere else. This insurance may be beneficial to you or it may not. What we found is that branched lines, so service lines that branch off outside of a residence into multiple homes, so think some townhome buildings where there's maybe 5 units. Well, there might be one tap off the main and then that line branches 5 different directions into those homes. Well, this insurance will not cover a branched service line.
Gotcha.
Large diameter services for commercial or industrial customers. When I say large diameter, I mean something greater than 2 inches in diameter aren't covered by this. So, larger facilities might have a 6-inch pipe that goes into the property to serve a fire service as well as the domestic service. So the insurance won't cover that. There's also, a cap to how much this insurance pays out. So it's $675 a month for the water service line insurance. And there's no deductible, and each qualifying event can have a $8,500 payout. But somebody may have a service line that is abnormally long or runs under a lot of pavement or has other issues associated with it. So their total liability may exceed that $8,500, and they may want to find insurance that has higher coverage. We've seen or heard that, I guess, Green State Credit Union has a insurance wing that some folks have used. State Farm has a policy, but I'm not sure all the details there. So when it comes to the insurance, it really is a shop around case by case basis, depending on what the homeowner needs.
So really just maybe check with your individual agent, see if you have one, see if they can provide some insight on that, shop around. That's probably the best bet outside of or in conjunction with what you all have got going on.
Yep. And depending on how much you trust your agent, I would be sure not to just allow them to dismiss things, because we've had some insurance agents call in and just be flagrantly wrong on a whole bunch of different points and had to, educate them on what this program was.
Sure.
Some had said, oh, well, it won't cover, essentially what's considered a pre-existing condition. So if you have a lead line, it's a pre-existing condition and it won't cover it. Well, that's false because we explicitly worked out in the marketing agreement with these companies, and it's the federal law that they have to replace a lead service line in its entirety when it gets broken, because a lead service line that becomes disturbed is actually the most common contributor to high lead levels in someone's drinking water. So it's no longer allowed for that to just be repaired. It has to be replaced.
Okay. So that actually ties in nicely. We just got one final question in from Facebook user that said, other than if my lead service line needs a repair, so that's kind of what you were talking about, if it was broken, is it required for me to replace the lead service line if the exploratory dig finds that I have one?
No. Yeah. So we crafted this lead reduction program in a way that doesn't obligate anybody into spending any money unless you have a broken service line and it is lead or lead contaminated. And in that case, we're trying to lessen that blow as much as possible.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it's still the property owner's responsibility to fix that line.
Okay. Awesome. So lastly, we're going to put the URL in the chat after we're done here today to the icgov.org /water. But if there's any other questions, if something gets stirred up that people really need to want to talk to somebody about, maybe they can't find the answer they're looking for, who can they contact, or who should they go to about any additional questions?
Yeah, any additional water-related questions, you can feel free to call the Iowa City Water Division at 319-356-5160. It's a 24/7 utility, so we have somebody here at all hours, either operating or answering the phones. If we can't resolve your question after hours, they'll take a message and somebody will get back with you the following day.
Okay, excellent. I guess one teeny follow up here from are the insurance and the cost share benefits tied together? Do you need to buy the insurance in the letter to utilize the cost share benefits?
No, with the exception of the exploratory or verification dig, we've run into where somebody has a broken service line and then they're like, well, what if I start digging back towards the water main? Can I then qualify for this money and that money? And we've said no. And the reason for that is once the line's broken, it's kind of too late to start an exploratory dig because you're already having to dig.
Right.
Otherwise, no, you can buy the insurance, you can use the cost share. There's no prerequisites either way.
Excellent. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for your time this morning. And we really appreciate you taking this time to share with us. And like I said, we will put the links and maybe the phone number for folks in the comments after this discussion today. And we will announce the ticket giveaway winner tomorrow. So be on the lookout on the ICAR socials for all of that. And Jonathan, once again, thank you so much, and hope you enjoy this Monday.
Yeah. Actually, I just thought of one thing, if you don't mind me taking a moment.
Sure. Yeah. Of course.
I was thinking probably one of the most important things for realtors to know about this is that every year we're going to be required by state law and federal law, every city across the country, to notify every parcel that we've identified as having a lead line or lead service unknown line with a letter.
Okay.
So annually, we're going to have to send that out. And we also have to notify them at the time of them commencing their service. So you can kind of think of that sort of like radon or some of those other inspections. This isn't a required inspection at the time of sale, but because it's nationwide, it's likely that your customers are going to be more lead aware at time of sale. So I can only imagine, like for instance, if I was going to a home and I knew it was older, I'd say, go get me a lead water test to find out if there's lead in that water. And if you can't prove to me that it isn't lead, then you're going to make use of this program. And I want to know what that service line is, or be compensated in some level to make sure that I can have that service line replaced prior to having my children drink the water in that home, because there could be some sort of lead pipe or fixture in it. So that'll be something. In fact, this year, by November 16th of 2024, nationwide, every home that's suspected of having lead will receive a letter from their local utility.
Okay. That is great to know. And certainly one of those final comments that we're going to have to follow up on professionally. I can already hear the buzz. That's just, I know it's happening about that. So yeah, we'll follow up on that on our own. And that's definitely some great information to have. And again, really wanted to say thank you. And we appreciate your time this morning. And thanks for those who are watching and for the comments this morning. It always makes our conversations more full and rich when we are able to have folks reach out and ask the questions as we go here. So, Jonathan, thank you. And again, have a great week. And to all those who are watching, you as well. And thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.